off to a beautiful and gorgeous celebration together, as it's time for me to talk to you guys about what's going on. What's going on? But first, a joke. Cat and mouse die, go to heaven. St. Peter sees him up there and goes up to the mouse and says, how's it going? You know, how you like in heaven? And the mouse goes, I really like it up here, but you know, I'd love to try roller skates. St. Peter says, okay, you got roller skates. A few days later, he's walking around and he sees the cat. Goes up to the cat, says, how you liking it up here? Cat goes, this is incredible. I love it up here. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, I found Meals on Wheels. All right. Today's talk, a milestone for our times. And so before I get into what that milestone is, this wasn't the talk I had planned for this week originally. But last night, I'm sitting and I'm watching one of my favorite movies, Inherit the Wind. And if you don't know the story of this movie, it's about a teacher in a southern town who's teaching the Darwin theory of evolution. And the law of that state is you're not allowed to do that. You're only allowed to teach creation. This movie takes place back, I think it takes place I think it's the 40s that the movie actually takes place, when there were still some southern states who didn't allow the teaching of, it might have been the 20s actually, might have been the 20s. Didn't allow the teaching of Darwin, only allowed teachings in school that related to the Bible. And so this was a real case that happened in our history that was then dramified for the stage and then the movies. Great. It has an incredible cast in it. It is, if you ever get a chance, it's wonderfully acted. But the thing that struck me most as I'm watching this movie that was made back in the late 50s was that it was still relevant today. What struck me about it was what they were speaking to in that movie was people afraid of progress, people afraid to open their minds to what is newly occurring. And it occurred to me, as one of the things that I had also watched recently was a YouTube video of a Trump supporter who was being told that Trump said that he could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and would still be elected president. And the woman he was talking to said, no, that never happened. And the woman who was interviewing him said, I can actually show you the video of him saying this. And the woman said, no, you can't, because it doesn't actually exist. And she goes, okay, well, here's my phone. I'll show you the video of him saying this. And she goes, I won't watch it. Right? And she goes, why won't you watch it? It's him saying it. Because it's fake news and it never happened. And I thought to myself, you know, of course, in the moment I'm watching, I'm going, this woman, you know, how can you be so delusional? And then I realized, as I'm watching Inherit the Wind last night, that actually that is not uncommon. It is not uncommon that we close our eyes and our minds to what the truth is, to hold on to a belief that is just so inherent in our bones. That opening to something new takes courage, takes a curiosity, takes an aliveness that not everybody has. And they're not wrong for not having it. In fact, you know, they just are being who they're being. And it just brought me back to realizing how often people are led by fear. and miss what is going on right before their eyes. And then I looked at my own life and I said, how often does that happen for me? How often do I miss something new emerging because I'm stuck in how things are? Because sometimes it's the little things that we miss that really are the beginnings of something new and brilliant. The big epiphany I had this week on Milestones was that we are witnessing something that I could not find in any of my searches throughout history. And that is, there is no charismatic leader leading the Black Lives Movement. That every time there has been a movement throughout history that has changed the world, it was led by somebody charismatic until now. We are witnessing something extraordinary. We are witnessing true grassroots in a way that humanity has never experienced before, as far as I could tell. In the 60s, we had a civil rights movement that was led by some very charismatic people. JFK, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X. These were all very charismatic people. And because they were leaders that could be seen so clearly, they could easily be killed off, and actually were, every one of them. I was reading what somebody wrote the other day who said that they felt that the end of the civil rights movement happened at the death of Robert Kennedy. And when I thought about it and looked at history, in so many ways it was true. But there's nobody to kill today. The movement is in the foundation. It's actually in the collective consciousness. What we are witnessing here is a shift in collective consciousness from a ground-up movement that has never before seen in our history. This is miraculous. I mean, this is an extraordinary thing and easy to miss. It's so easy to miss. Now, am I saying there are no Black leaders out there? There's no leaders standing up? No, I'm not saying there aren't leaders, but can you name one that stands out? Can you name one that is like, you know, charismatic in a way that we are used to throughout our history? Gandhi was a charismatic leader who led a nation to independence. Jesus was a charismatic leader who began a movement that has flourished, you know, up until today. There's always been those kinds of leaders until now. This is really something. And why I thought this was important to share, well, there's many reasons why. One of the reasons I thought this was important to share is that it really shows progress in the collective consciousness of humanity itself. It shows that we have gone to a place where when enough everyday people awaken to a particular idea, that idea grows and stands, has legs, has roots in a way that we have never before witnessed throughout history. There is nothing throughout recorded history that has anything to do with how this movement is moving. So how does that impact us individually? Well, this is available to every one of us, this awakening. It doesn't matter what you think of Black Lives Matters in and of itself. I mean, for me, it matters because I stand on the side of ending racism, and I believe this is a beautiful movement to do that. But for those who disagree and think it's, you know, not a great movement or whatever, the part that's important here is that there is an awakening to an ability to bring forth that which is wanting to arise. This is the greatest showing of true consciousness, of spirit, of love, of divine, a wakefulness that's ever been presented. Yeah, the church was built on what's called intercessors, those who would step in and speak on your behalf to God. And then, Ernest Holmes comes along and says, we don't need intercessors. We speak directly because there is nothing outside ourselves, it's within ourselves. And then here's this movement where no one is speaking to anybody outside themselves. They're all coming forth and expressing through this divine essence that is in every one of them. I recently did a video called Black Voices Speaking to White Allies. And in the second one of these, it's all ministers speaking. And what's interesting about that, and I didn't even think about this until I started working on the third one, which I've just begun putting together, is not a single minister spoke to spiritual consciousness in what they shared. The transcendental movement in the 1830s was led by people like Emerson. Emerson was very charismatic. He, and not just him. I mean, there were several that are considered very, when you look back at that movement, they are considered very charismatic. I can see in the chat now as I'm looking down that there's folks saying, well, what about this movement? What about this movement? Every one of them had charismatic, it's not true that the rise of feminine did not have in fact, some of those charismatic leaders still exist today, like Jean Houston. And so and there were, this is different, folks. This is different. There are oh, we got another new message here. Let me see. Well, I don't mind being distracted. I mean, this is all part of it. We're here to have a discussion. This is good. I like that you guys, and we're going to get to the part where you guys are actually going to share. And you're going to be able to tell your side of it and say how wrong I am. And I'm okay with that. You guys can do that all you want when it's your turn to speak. I'm happy to hear how wrong I am.
You get started, Cliff.
But there is something growing here that is new and exciting, and it isn't about, and maybe you guys are right, and it's been bubbling up for a while, but it has a sense of groundedness and growingness. Ernest Holmes was a very charismatic character. Emerson was a very charismatic character. There were people in each of those movements you could point to and say, wow, that was one of the leaders of that movement. It's going to be really hard to do that now. And that's okay. Get the bottom, below that I'm speaking to, which is that something new is arising. And that newness is coming from spirit directly to each and every one of us. That the need for a charismatic leader is no longer the case. That's the important piece of this, is the need for a charismatic leader is no longer the case. And that is what we can find within each of ourselves, that we can come together as a group with similar ideas of what is arising in all of us, that the value of love and compassion is becoming so large throughout humanity as a whole that we all get to embrace it in a brand new way. This is the key to what I'm speaking to. That each of us in our own lives has an opportunity to drop the fear away to see what is arising. That you don't need to look to me, to Ernest Holmes, to Gene Houston, or anybody else out there. That it's good to come together and share these talks and share these ideas, because they are ideas that are good to share, that need sharing. But that each of us, we have clearly reached a place of evolution. The point of what I'm trying to share is that we have reached a point of evolution as a humanity where good can arise without somebody pointing the way. We don't need anyone to point the way for us to feel the good arising, and that is showing itself throughout the planet. This is the real key to what I'm speaking to. And the other side of that is it's time to drop the fear of allowing newness to arise. Let us not be afraid of what is new coming up. Let us be curious. If you feel fear, it's a really good time to recognize it as simply something in your way of seeing the beauty of something new arising. Every one of us in our own lives and as a humanity is rising, evolving right here and now. I am. I know you are. Each and every one of you. This is our moment. This is our time. It shows all over the place. We no longer need charismatic leaders to show us the way. It's showing itself to each and every one of us. It is our job to awaken to our inner magnificence. It is our job to put aside the fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward in the presence of fear. If you feel fear, you have a chance to rise in courage and to come together with other like-minded folks. There has never been a movement, including this one, that is leaderless, but we don't need a charismatic leader to show us the way. The leaders of today are more managers of putting, of us coming together. That's my job. I show up here on Sunday not to be your charismatic leader, but to simply give us a forum to come together to share ideas where maybe we disagree on some of them. And to have the courage to speak up, and to have the courage to share, and have the courage to be together, to stand in what we know to be true. And more are doing that around the planet. And we can tap into each of that, the humanity of it all, because now it is impacting collective consciousness on a scale that we have never seen before in history. It may be that there were other movements I'm unaware of that didn't have a charismatic leader. And all those have fed to this moment now, where what we have here is something beautiful arising, something new throughout humanity, where everybody's feeling it. Whether resisting it, they're still feeling it. Those who say, no, these movements are bad, they're still feeling it. Or those who say, this is magnificent time. We get to come together and arise together. And I, for one, love that. I love that I cannot find a charismatic leader in our time, and yet movement is happening so magnificently. I love you. That's what I came to share today.
God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.